wonderful to be together and to learn together on this beautiful morning in Yerushalayim, and beautiful opportunity to continue our study of Rav Kook and the beautiful, beautiful ideas of Rav Kook. This morning we're going to look at a topic which I think is a very important topic, and one that's inspirational. And I have at the top of the page Rav Kook on self-belief, self-confidence, believing in ourselves. And this is something that we find beautifully portrayed, written, taught by Rav Kook. I want to begin with the following anecdote. And Rav Kook was 18 years old when one of the great rabbis of the generation passed away. His name was Rabbi Salanter. I'm sure that's a name that you're familiar with. He was the founder of the Musar movement. The Musar movement spoke a lot about, they taught about the importance of cheshbon hanefesh, that everybody needs to make an accounting, that we need to look in the mirror every day, and we have to try to improve. We need to see our faults. We need to make a very decisive cheshbon hanefesh, to make a cheshbon that we have to calculate. So that was a big part of the Musar movement. When he passed away, the story is told that Rav Kook, he tore Kriya. He did not meet Rabbi Salanter, but he considered him to be one of his great teachers. He tore Kriya. He sat on the floor and he wept when he heard the passing of Rabbi Salanter. But what's interesting is that we find in the writings of Rav Kook that he was not on the same page with Rabbi Salanter, and he actually takes a different path, and that's the path that we're going to look at this morning. And I want to begin with the following Gemara. It's a Gemara that's found in Brachos Mem Amud Aleph, and it speaks about, this is the top of the page, number 1, it speaks about what we are to eat and what we are not supposed to eat. So it says the following, this is the statement that the Gemara makes, this is number 1. The Gemara Mivuot Shtei Hadrachot Mipi Harav Mari Bishmo Shel Rabbi Yochanan. And here we have the Gemara itself, the second line. Haragil be'adashim, a person that eats lentils, adashim, echad l'shloshim yom. It's good to eat them once every 30 days. And monea askara mibeso, that it's helpful in terms of not having askara, which is some kind of throat ailment. It could be a very dangerous kind of throat ailment. Aval kol yuma lo, but one should not eat adashim. I don't know if people here like lentils or beans, but the Gemara says not to eat them on a regular basis. That's what the Gemara says. My time mishum dekasha l'reach hapeh, says you'll have bad breath if you eat them on a regular basis. That's the Gemara statement. And then the Gemara speaks about mustard. Haragil bechardal echad l'shloshim yom, having mustard once every 30 days. Monea chalaim beso, that's also helpful in protecting a person from sicknesses in their home. Aval kol yuma lo, you should not have mustard daily. My time and mishum dekasha lechulsha deliba, it brings about a weakness or weakening of the heart. So here we have some cooking advice or eating or diet advice from the Gemara. Rav Kook does not see this to be understood in the literal meaning, and very often in Agadic passages in the Gemara, there's a deeper understanding, and this is what Rav Kook says. Look at what Rav Kook writes. This is Einayah. This is his commentary on the Gemara in Brachos. This is the second paragraph. You have a 2 on the side. Hera musari yesh lahasmich. He says there's a musar lesson here. There's an ethical or a moral lesson that we are to learn from this. She'adashim he ma'achal avelim. When we think about adashim, and this we just read recently in the Torah of the adashim, of the lentils or the beans that were being cooked, that which is round, which we still have that minhag today in a house of an avel, the Suda Savra, the first meal, eating an egg. In the Gemara speaks about of eating beans, eating lentils. So Rav Kook says this term adashim, it's a ma'achal avelim. What the Gemara is referring to is that this is an item that would be eaten by an avel, by somebody in mourning. Uvemazon hamusari. And here there is a lesson, a musar lesson for our ethical or our moral diet. Ra'oi leprakim gam kein la'ir lev achelak hamusari. It's good every so often to think about this idea, shel zichron hamita, to think about the day of death. That is something that a person should think about. Mehasibot hamitragshot be'olam, v'yirat ha'onesh, and a person should think about a fear of punishment, hapshuta, mevia gam hi tachlit tova. That's something that's beneficial. Ayidei ma shemishaber libo. It breaks the heart when you think about the day of death. And again, the Musar movement very often put emphasis on that, to think about that on a more regular basis, that there's going to be, again, cheshbon hanefesh, we're going to stand before God in judgment, and we should think about that every day as we're determining how we're going to live our day. And it's good to do that. Shemishaber libo shel adam litrachek miga'ava, right? It brings a person to a place where they're not going to be arrogant. Shmevia l'shichachat Hashem yitbarach, that you don't forget God. In other words, that you're always reminding yourself of this idea. But here of Kook, and we can underline the following, Omnam rak liprakim, that's something that should not be done on a regular basis. Rak liprakim ra'oi lishtamesh b'koach hamusari hazeh. Only every so often you should think about this heavy musar idea. Aval bitmidut ra'oi liyod lishtamesh b'tzad hagavoa shel hamusar. We should think about the uplifting ideas of musar. Be'ahavat hatov. Think about the love of good, v'hatzedek, and righteousness, ubenoam Hashem yiparach, the sweetness of Hashem and of being close to Hashem. So here Rav Kook gives a fascinating interpretation. What does it mean, adashim, that you should have it only once in a while? You should not have it on a regular basis. Thoughts of mourning, thoughts of death, using that perspective in your musar, in kind of your ethical thinking, that should be something that you do every so often, once a month. Once a month, you can think about that idea, but not more than that. On a regular basis, you should not have the adashim. And just to end the paragraph, ki hatimidut b'rayon hamusar pashut. If we use this perspective and this very basic idea of musar, where it's more of this heavy-handed idea of giving a person, musar shel yirat ha'onesh, that we should be afraid of punishment, mevia lidei eitzev v'shi'amum. It brings us to a sad place. It brings us to a depressed place. And it brings into the secret chambers of the heart, the inner chambers of the heart, it brings us to think about things that are negative. We don't want negativity in our life. We want positivity in our life. Ki adam shalem b'deotav, a person who's whole in his thoughts, in his thinking, perspective, uvemidotav rak be'et shenafsho simcha. Only when we're filled with joy, that's going to catapult us, that's going to move us in a positive direction. So this is the way that Rav Kook interprets his Gemara, which is fascinating, a very beautiful interpretation. When it comes to lentils, only once in a while, right? When it comes to mourning, that's not something to do regularly. And when it comes to mustard, what's mustard? Mustard also, the sharpness of the mustard, that sharpness of musar, not on a regular basis. And it brings about a chulsha deliba. It brings about a weakening of the heart. That's going to weaken us. Right? We need to be built up. We need positivity. We need simcha in our life. And interesting, in this way, he moves away, as much as he was in awe of Rabbi Yisrael Salanter and the Musar movement, he takes a different path. He doesn't believe that's the way that we should be thinking about sin, thinking about our Judaism, thinking about life. It has to be filled with joy. A good friend of mine, his name is Rabbi Shalom Hammer. He lives in Beit Shemesh. We were roommates in Yeshiva University, and unfortunately, about 5 years ago, his daughter committed suicide, and his daughter Gila, Zichrona Livracha, and ever since that time, he's devoted his life, every day of his life, to teaching about suicide prevention. He goes school to school throughout this country. He's traveled throughout the world. And this is what he's devoting his life to, this sensitivity and to teach about this very, very difficult topic. And I've heard him speak a couple of times. And he talks about, without going into the details, which he does not in terms of the actual suicide, but what he believed led to the suicide of his daughter. Her name was Gila. And he describes that she was in camp and on a WhatsApp group with all the counselors in camp, that there was somebody that wrote something very negative about her that spread like wildfire throughout the camp with that message. And he believes she was a teenager. I believe she was 18 years old. And he believes, again, it's complex. There are many factors, but he believed that it started there. It started at that moment when she felt that hurt, when her self-esteem was was destroyed. And I think this is something that Rav Kook is, that's the extreme on the other side. But Rav Kook is very sensitive to this idea of how important it is to build people up, to build ourselves up, the simcha that we need to have, the joy that we need to have. And he felt the heaviness of Musar, of the teaching of cheshbon and nefesh, of always looking at yourself, calculating your sins, this idea of one day I'm going to stand before God in judgment, even though we hear that and we know that, and there's a time for that as well. That's the adashim, right? Those are the lentils once a month, right? For maybe for a moment or two to think about that. But otherwise, for the other 29 days, think all positive. Let's look at the following. And Rav Kook, throughout his writings, and we'll see a few examples of this throughout his writings, he speaks about the positivity and how we need to build ourselves up and build others up as well. The positive words that we need to say to others, the compliments that we need to give to others, to be mechazek others. So before Rav Kook came to the land of Israel, late 1800s, he was a rabbi in a small community in Griva, in Latvia, and he begins to write actually his own Musar work himself, which is not published until after he passes away. It's called Musar Avicha. It's a work that we have today. By the way, Musar Avicha, if you just look at it's a second source where it says number 3. So you have Musar, and Avicha actually stands for Rav Kook's name. The alphabet is Avraham, Yitzchak, and then the Chaf is Kohen Kook. So you have sort of, which they sometimes do, the embed the name of the person in the title of a sefer. So it's Musar Avicha, which of course means the Musar of our father, but it's Avram, Yitzchak, Kook. Okay, just interesting. So this is the very first line that he begins his sefer with when he writes about Musar. So we know we have Musar sefer, Musar Svarim. The Mesilas Yesharim is well known. Chovos Halavavos is what we have. A whole genre of Musar Svarim, which is wonderful. You have to find the right Musar sefer. But this is how he begins his Musar sefer. Look at what he writes. Nir'eh sim she'efshar latzeit yedei chova be'inyan chovot halev, that it'd be impossible for us to fulfill this obligation of chovot halev, the obligations that we have of the heart, meaning the way that we feel, the way that we think. And this is, again, the whole world of Musar, like the inner world that we're working on. It would be impossible for a person to do this. Rak im yisader sefer le'atzmo. The first thing that he says in his book is you should write your own book. You should write your own book of Musar. You know what you need to correct. I can't tell you that. Right? To think about what are the issues and what are maybe the Mamarei Chazal, the statements in Chazal that are uplifting to you, that speak to you. So his first statement, his first teaching is, I can't really write a Musar, and I haven't seen this in any other Musar book. Every other Musar book is telling you exactly what you need to do and what you need to change. And Rav Kook's first statement is, I can't really tell you. You really need to think about that yourself and to write, Rakim Yisader Sefer La'atzmo, Belimudim Hadrushim Lo Bazeh, what you need, what it is that you need in your life. Write your own book, he says in Musar. Okay, so that's statement number 1, and the confidence that he's giving the reader, saying it's for you to make that change. It's for you to write your words of Musar, which is an interesting idea to actually think about doing that. Right, to take the next few weeks, the next few months, and to put together your own work. What is it that I want to work on, that I want to improve, that I want to read for inspiration? Okay. And another beautiful teaching from Rav Kook in this area of self-belief, self-confidence. This comes from his great work, Orot HaKodesh, the bottom of the page. And the name of this piece is Hanoadim Ligdolot, those that are on the track, those that are moving towards greatness. And let's read the following. And again, it's always, to me, it's special to read the actual writing of Rav Kook. And here are his words. Sarich ha'adam la'akir et kishrono ha'pnimi. It's necessary for a person to know their talents. A person should know and to realize and to recognize the talents that they have. V'yeda be'atzmo et notzar im notzar ligdolot. And if a person knows that they can accomplish great things, al yibahel mipnei avon shel gava. Do not be intimidated or don't be concerned that you're going to transgress being too egotistical. In other words, often we don't, Rav Kook I think is alluding to the idea that we don't do things because, okay, that would be gaiva for me to to teach that class or to organize that event. Who am I to do that? So he says, no, if you see the talents that you have, recognize the talents that you have, do not be concerned with gaiva. Even though, again, interesting, the Musar movement, that was one of the main issues, was humility and to break gaiva. And Rav Kook comes along and says, I'm not concerned about gaiva, right? And don't be concerned about that. If you're doing the right thing, if those are your talents, if you have a contribution to make, do that. To recognize that you have intellect, if you're a person of intellect, as we all are, Jews are all high IQ, so we all have that. To recognize that, and ve'erech netiyat ritzono, you see that you have a desire to do something, to accomplish something, to attain something in life. Rav Kook says, go for that. I'll take your hand in a moment. Adarabba, just the opposite. Mibnei anava psula, because of false humility, inappropriate humility, hamidakat et haneshama, that brings down, that depresses the neshama, umit shateshet et or ha'eloki shebenefesh, and it blurs the light of God that's found in your soul. Sarich lihizaher habe yoter. Be more concerned. You have to be more concerned that it's a false humility. That's what I'm concerned with. Not with gaiva, not with ego, not with being too confident. So take that confidence and run with it. Did you want to make a comment?
Just that my daughter, who's a teacher,
Yes.
Rabbi, who is also to build up a person,
Good.
to think well of yourself.
Very nice.
It gives you a ring on this.
Beautiful, beautiful. Beautiful. Yes, yeah, we need shiurim on this. I didn't really grow up with this so much. I'll comment on it later, but in the world of Yeshiva University, or maybe in the more Litvish world, I don't remember my rabbis kind of giving us this kind of positive. No, they believed in us and they loved us, but I don't remember really hearing it. I don't remember them saying that to us. So speaking about students, so the next source, the top of page 2. So Baruch Hashem, we have myself, my wife, we have beautiful family, children. Our youngest child has Down syndrome, and Baruch Hashem, she's doing wonderfully. She's 8 years old, and she went to Shalva, which I'm sure many of you are familiar with Shalva, which was just such a beautiful experience. It's an amazing place. People from around the world, by the way, come to Shalva to learn how they do that, and they're trying to develop other institutions like that throughout the world. She started first grade, and she goes to a school called Nitzanim. And when I walked in the first day, walking in with her, as we're meeting the teacher for the first time, as we walk in the front door, there's a very large poster. I mean, larger than a poster, like in a school where you have the entire wall, and you have words on the wall as you walk in. And they're the words of Rav Kook, and it's these words that we'll read right now. It's from Orot HaKodesh. It's from one of his most difficult works, but one of the most beautiful works. And here it is. They're actually famous words, and this is what's on the wall in her school. Ale lamala ale, go higher and higher. Ki koach oz lecha, you have tremendous strength. Yesh lecha kanfei ruach, you have wings of spirit. Kanfei nisharim abirim, you have mighty wings of an eagle. Al tichachesh bam, do not forsake them. Pen yichachashu lach, or lecha, or they will forsake you. Doresh otam, seek them out. V'yimtzu lecha miyad, and then you will find them immediately. So this is Rav Kook. Ale lemala ale, go up and up. You have tremendous strength. You have tremendous power. You have wings of spirit. You have wings of an eagle. You can accomplish beyond anything you can imagine. So this is what Rav Kook writes. This is the message that Rav Kook is writing about all the time. And I want to share with you, this is a halacha, and Rav Kook sees also this message of positivity and self-belief in this halacha, or in this practice. And it's what's called vidui meiser. It's something that we're not really familiar with because we don't do it today, but it's one of the mitzvot of the Torah. And that is in year 4 and year 7, the Shemitah cycle, that a person comes to Yerushalayim, they come to the Beit HaMikdash, and they make a statement, they declare that they have given all of the ma'asrot, all the trumot, all the obligations of giving tzedakah, they have done that. And the mitzvah is to declare that, to say it, that I have done my obligation, I've completed my obligation. And let me just these are the psukim in the Torah itself. Devarim chavav, Ki techalel la'aser kol ma'asar tevuatcha v'shana shlishit shnat ha'ma'aser, when you have completed giving the ma'aser in the third year, v'natata lalevi lager le'atom v'almana, and you've given to all that were required, to the Levi, to the ger, yatom, v'achlu b'sharecha v'saveu, ve'amarta lifnei Hashem Elokecha, you are to say before God, bi'arti hakodesh min habayit, I have given everything from my house, everything that I was required to give, I have given. Shamati b'kol Hashem Elokai, I've heard the voice of God. Asiti kechol asher tzivitani, I have done everything that you have commanded me to do. It's called vidui meiser. It's standing before God and saying, I have done it right. I've done it correctly. I declare that it's a mitzvah that I've done appropriately. So this is what Rav Kook writes. Go to the paragraph. We'll read that. Mitzvah zu nikreit vidui ma'asro. This is what's called vidui ma'aser, right below the bold psukim. Madua nikreit mitzvah zu vidui. Madua bichlal tzarich adam benosaf l'nitinat ha'ma'asrot. Why, beyond just giving the ma'aser, lomar bepiv, that you need to actually declare it, say it with your mouth. She'asa et ha-mitzvah kira'oi. So this is Ein Ayah. Rav Kook writes the following. Natana lanu ha-Torah derech lehe'ara. The Torah is awakening us, is pointing something out to us. Shetzarich ha'adam sheyismach gam ken lepa'amim. Every so often you also have to be joyous as well, more than just every so often, but regularly. Gam bebitui svatayim, that you have to declare it with your mouth. Al ma'aseh hatov asher asa. You've done something good. You have completed a mitzvah. So announce it, say it, declare it, be happy, be joyous. I've done it, and there's a mitzvah to do that. Just you've done the mitzvah, but now the Torah says also declare it, say it. Let your ears hear it as well. Ukefi amida ruya lechazek levavo bavoda, and this now strengthens you in your avodat Hashem. Ulesameach nafsho. It brings a joy to your nefesh. B'pa'olei yosher ketorah mitzvah, that you're doing that which is righteous, following the way of the Torah mitzvot. Ra'ui sheimtza benafsho korat ruach. You should find a tranquility in your heart, in your nefesh, in your soul. It should lift you up. So every few years, and it should be more than just every few years, but this is an example of it, where you declare, where you state, I have done the mitzvah. V'yamalei simcha v'shalva. You should be filled with joy. V'lo yeh tamid beinav kerasha. No, you should not always think of yourself in your eyes as a rasha. And not to limit yourself where you have fulfilled your obligation. And we're always hearing, well, you should daven more and you should give more tzedakah, you should do more chesed. Okay, we need to hear that, but we also need to hear how beautiful that you daven, how beautiful is the tzedakah you're giving, how beautiful is the chesed, and to feel good about that as well. So that is Rav Kook's interpretation of that. And interesting, he says that usually when we think about the word vidui, right? Vidui is confessing what? Vidui is, that's right, vidui is sins, but the same word is used here, vidui. There's a time to confess the good things that you've done, your accomplishments. And that is to be uplifting. Okay, we turn now to the next page, please. Am I suggesting that we do that? I don't know. We need to. I would say we need to find a healthy balance. Rav Kook felt that there was too much on the other side, and there was just a little too much of criticism and even self-criticism. In other words, we're walking around feeling, well, I don't daven with kavanah properly, and I don't give enough tzedakah, and I'm not. In other words, there's a time to highlight the good as well, to think about it, to feel it, maybe even to share it. And as this mitzvah says, there's a time to share it as well. To verbalize it and to hear that. And we need to feel good about ourselves. I think today, even more so, interesting, he writes this 100 years ago, this idea in all these writings. I think it's very true today. One of the things that they're talking about, it's especially true in the teen world, as I mentioned before, but maybe in society in general, is that we're not feeling good about ourselves. But if you go to the big bookstores, the biggest sections is about happiness. How do we find happiness? Why is everyone trying to figure this out? It means people are walking around unhappy, right? So this is it. Yes, let's take a comment or two. Yeah, please.
I think it's part of the unhappiness is that in this generation, in this world, always like we need to be needed, and Hashem doesn't need us. And when we're saying what we've done, it's also acknowledging we filled Hashem's need in doing something.
Beautiful.
So it's like, and you also say, like you're meant to, to tell these wondrous things that Hashem's gifting you with that
Mm-hmm.
opportunity to do
Mm-hmm.
something.
Right.
It's not just about the need, it's about the opportunity to serve Hashem in that way.
Very nice. Beautiful. Yes.
You mentioned one of the story before, something Levavos.
Right. Chovot HaLevavot.
Okay,
Rabbeinu Bachya.
what's his name?
Rabbeinu Bachya is the author. Yeah.
I was learning, and I don't remember if it was that sefer, but it's also a Musar thing, and it was about carrying one of the mitzvahs that you have to do is carry the yoke.
Right. Very good. No say ol bechavera. Right. Im chavera.
Right, and so I mentioned to you I go to this Haredi shiur, and
Yeah.
that was one of the things that they emphasized
Yeah.
carrying the yoke.
Carrying the yoke. Right.
Right. So I found that to be a very difficult thing.
Uh-huh.
That's what it's about. But that's what our mission is to Hashem, is to carry the yoke,
Right.
the burden. And I found
Right.
it to be a very,
Okay.
and I'm an observant person, but I found that to be an extremely difficult thing. So this is almost like the antithesis that
I think. Yeah.
that doing the mitzvot is to lift.
That's right. Right. That's right. Aleh lemala aleh. Right. Talking about the wings. Yes.
To carry the burden.
Very good.
They emphasize carrying it heavily.
Okay. Right. Right. Okay. Hey, these are the different paths. These are the different drachim, and the Musar movement has a particular one. And as we're learning today, Rav Kook takes a different. As much as he loved that world and those teachings, but he felt for this generation and maybe for other reasons as well that we need to hear these messages. Yeah, please.
They used to say that, when a father came home from work Erev Shabbos and he knew he wasn't going to have a job on Monday,
Right.
Shabbos,
Right.
the saying at the table was always to
The shared design of Yid. Yeah, that's right. Very good.
So, for those who said it, their children did not remain.
Right. Right. Right.
Why do you want to be a Jew?
Very good.
For those
Very
who
good.
came
Yeah.
and celebrated Shabbos and
Uh-huh.
the beautiful rest of the week, their children remained religious. And I
Very
think
nice.
that's a very big message.
Very nice. Beautiful. Beautiful. Let's turn now to page 3. This is, as I mentioned, Rav Kook writes a lot about this idea, actually. And there's an author that put together a book called Yesh Lecha Kanfei Ruach. You see that on the top of page 3. It's an entire volume that's a collection of the writings of Rav Kook just on this topic, the topic of self-esteem, of self-belief, of building a person up. This is the top of page 3. It says Yesh Lecha Kanfei Ruach. So in other words, it's not like one or two short ideas here and there, Rav Kook. It's an entire book. It's about 200 pages where this person has collected all of the writings where he talks about this topic in particular. I just want to share with you one teaching from this book. Again, this is from the writings of Rav Kook, and he interprets this saying from Pirkei Avos at the very top. So this is in Avos. It's Perek Beis Mishnah Hey. And I'm sure you may be familiar with this. It says Lamed Chet at the very top, and this is the quote. It says V'lo am haaretz chasid. So this is a statement that's found in the Mishnah that in am haaretz, meaning if you're not learned, if you're not knowledgeable, so you can't be a chasid, right? You can't be, and that's kind of little bit of a negative statement, right? A little bit of a negative tone, right? If you're an am haaretz, you don't know how to learn, you haven't learned Gemara, you don't know Mishnah, you don't know Chumash, you can't be a chassid, right? You can't really be a saintly person. So what's Rav Kook's comment on that? Again, there's that negativity there, but look how he turns it around. He says, okay, true, you cannot be a chassid, aval mashahu lemala mechasidut. But maybe that person can reach a place that's even higher than a chassid. Who says that being a chassid is actually the epitome, is the highest place for a person? Kamo kedusha, maybe that person can reach holiness, anava. Maybe he has great humility. Utchiyat hametim, which I'm not sure what he means by that per se. We'll maybe skip that but resurrection of the dead. V'gilui Eliyahu, the person can have a revelation of Elijah. Also, what he means by that is a little bit of a mystery. V'ruach hakodesh, maybe that person can reach ruach hakodesh. Mibnei godel kedushatam, because of the greatness of their holiness. Hem shavim l'chol nefesh. right? They have a nefesh that can reach such a state. Ki chol levavot daresh Hashem. Every lave, every heart is searching for God, wants Hashem. Ve'echad amarbe, ve'echad amamit, ubilvad sheyichaven libo l'shamayim. Whether you do a little or a lot. So what does he mean by this? First of all, this is quite an astounding interpretation of this statement in the Mishnah, to say he's not a chassid, but he's greater than the chassid. So I was thinking about the following example. Let's say you have a soldier today that's going into Gaza. He may be an Am Haaretz. He may be a person who hasn't learned, an 18-year-old boy, right, that's about to enter Gaza. He didn't necessarily go to yeshiva. He doesn't have a great background. He didn't learn, doesn't know Talmud, doesn't know Mishnah, and he's davening mincha. Okay, he's brought up in a Sephardi home where you daven mincha before they're entering their davening mincha. Then you do have the person of great knowledge. Let's say somebody learning in Lakewood, somebody learning in the Mir. They're learning all day, and they're davening mincha that afternoon as well. So I want to just compare for a moment those minchas of those two individuals. Right, the one who is steeped in learning, who has all the knowledge, he's davening mincha, and the soldier which the soldier doesn't really have much of a background, but the way that he's davening before he enters Gaza. Maybe what Rav Kook is saying here, that person, even that Am Haaretz, that there can be a kind of Ruach HaKodesh, there can be a kind of Kedusha. There's a kind of anava, the way that person turns to Hashem, that soldier is turning to God that moment before he knows that his life is going to be in danger, that he's protecting OUisrael. It could be that they both have equal. I'm not judging, but I think just to point out the way that I understand this piece from Rav Kook, because you're not learned doesn't mean that you're not kadosh, and it doesn't mean that you don't have a close relationship with Hashem, and it doesn't mean that you cannot have what he calls a Gilui Eliyahu, that you can almost see Elijah the prophet. Yes, did you want to? Yeah.
Said, he no longer believed in God.
Right.
God died at Auschwitz.
Mm-hmm.
But can I tell the story? It's
Yeah.
quick.
Yeah.
My oldest grandson was born with cystic fibrosis and was very, very sick. I brought him to Israel, and this was an Israeli man that took a liking to him, and my grandson with him. And this man, who said he did not believe in God, went to the Kotel, davened for my grandson. Today, my grandson is 39 years old, climbed the highest mountain in America, and he just became engaged.
Baruch Hashem and Mazel Tov.
But I wrote a children's book about this.
Wow.
And the question was, is one man's prayer heard,
Uh-huh.
and is it answered?
Right. Okay, beautiful, beautiful. So Rav Kook, when we think about others, when we think about ourselves, we can say we're an Am Haaretz, right? That happens to be, it's not a very kind term to use about a person. You're an Am Haaretz. I don't know if you ever heard anybody say that. It's not really a kind term to use. And Am Haaretz, you don't know anything. You're ignorant. You're an ignoramus. And Rav Kook says, okay, yes, Am Haaretz he is, but who says that? Who says he's not great in other areas, and even greater than what it is to be a chassid? Yes.
When we go back a couple of generations and ask ourselves why we're here. We're not here because we now value so much the learning.
Mm-hmm.
We're here because in the home, the mother, the grandmother, the daughter learned the halachas, and father kept the halachas. They weren't sitting in yeshiva. They were not big ones other than Gemara.
Okay.
But we're alive because
Right. The simple Jews and their faith. Absolutely. All right. It is. Yes, please.
Sorry, there was at least one of our Gilui, our heroes, who left some note to the family. It was right at the beginning of the war. I don't remember names. And he said, "Don't be sad for me, because I'm proud to give my life."
Uh-huh. Okay, good.
for my
Beautiful. Beautiful.
That was my daughter-in-law's cousin, Ben Zussman.
Who was that?
Ben Zussman.
Oh, Ben Zussman.
Was my daughter-in-law's cousin.
Wow, wow. Yes, those are the tzaddikim. These are the kadoshim. This is what Rav Kook, the way Rav Kook asks us to think about ourselves and to think about others as well. And it's a different perspective. It's a different path. All right, 3 weeks from this evening, we'll be lighting the first candle, the first light of Hanukkah. And so I want to just share an insight, which from Rav Kook, which highlights really this idea of being a gibor, and that all of us are the giborim. So this is what the Gemara said. This is page 3, right in the middle of the page is the Gemara, the famous Gemara, Daf Chaf Aleph, where we have discussion in Gemara Shabbos about Hanukkah, Kishagavru Beis Chashmonai v'Nitzchum, when the house of the Chashmonaim were victorious, Badku v'lo matzu lepach echad shel shemen, they found that single jug of oil, Shayam Munach bechotamo shel Kohen Gadol. It had the signature of Kohen Gadol. We're in the middle of page 3. V'lo hayabo ela la'adlik yom echad, and there was only enough oil for a single day. V'naseh bo nes v'adliku menu shivas yamim, and it lasted for 7 days or 8 days. Actually, I think that's a typo there. So look at what Rav Kook writes. When we think about the Kohanim and the Kohanim that entered and the heroism and the courage of the Kohen, Hinei keshem she'akohen haklali sheba'am, just as the Kohanim that are part of the nation of Israel, Hashem huchan lahorot chukei Torah mishpatav, that they are the great teachers, they're the great leaders, they're the inspirational figures for the nation. Leharot bepoel, that they show us in action. Tochen shel chayim kedoshim, that they show us what it means to live a holy life. Uteorim leman heyot lemofet la'am kulo, that they should stand as models for the role models for the rest of the nation. Here's the key line. You can underline, Kain yesh bechol adam Yisrael tzad kahuna, that every single Jew, we have a little bit of kahuna, of the holiness of a Kohen within each of us. Mipnei shebichlalam hema mamlechet kohanim v'goy kadosh. We are called a mamlechet kohanim, the entire nation. So the greatness of the Kohen and the holiness of the Kohen and the holiness of the Kohen that enters the Kodesh Kadashim, we have a spark of that. We have a piece of that, every single Jew. Hatshuka haprimid, this desire, this inner desire, legedushat hachayim, for the holiness of life, ladat haTorah, v'lalechet b'drachea, to know the Torah, to walk in its paths. He genuza, it's found in the depth, be'omek halev ha'yisraeli. Every Jew is a Kohen. To look at every Jew, that they have the sanctity, the kedusha of a Kohen. And we're all mamlechet kohanim. And how about that pach shemen? How about that jug of oil? So Rav Kook writes the following, 4 lines up, Oto hapach hakatan, that little pach, this is 4 lines up from the very bottom, second word on the line. Oto hapach hakatan shemunach bechotamo shel Kohen Gadol, that little jug of oil that had the signature of the Kohen Gadol, lo yuchlu hayivanim litamo, that the Yevanim were not able to make tameh. La'akor michlal Yisrael kishuram, whatever they tried to do, the Greeks, what they could not do is to remove the connection, the kishur apnimi hamok im Hashem Elokei Yisrael, that every Jew has that connection to Hashem. Ze lo yuchlu kol ba'alei koach uzro'ah. No matter how strong they were, how much they tried to destroy the Jewish people, that we become assimilated, that would not happen. Mayim Rabim, he quotes a pasuk from Shir Hashirim, Mayim Rabim lo yuchlu lechabot et ha'ava, uneharot lo yishtafuha, that even the greatest waters cannot extinguish the love that we have for Hashem. So what is the oil, what does that pach shemen represent in Rav Kook's eyes? That's the pach shemen that's found within every Jew. That we have that little jug of oil, that we have that purity of the oil within us. As much as they try to destroy and to make impure all the oil, that's not possible to do. That every single Jew, and again, this has come from I think a classic Hasidic idea as well, of the Pintele Yid, right? That beauty that's found, the neshama, that spark of Hashem that's found within all of us. We need to think of ourselves that way, says Rav Kook. We need to think of others as we greet others, as we meet others, as we interact with others, to see that in others. Okay, Rav Kook is a great believer in this idea, as we see this morning, of self-esteem, of building ourselves up, of looking at the positive within us, to see the neshama within us. 2 personalities that I want to, 2 modern-day personalities that I think take the same path. We spoke about Rabbi Yisrael Salanter on a different path, but Rav Kook, when I think about Rav Kook, I think about another rabbi, and that is Rabbi Dr. Abraham Twersky, who writes about this topic. And we know famously, he said, I wrote 70 books, but I really wrote 1 book, 70 different ways. And he says, there's 1 book that I wrote, and that's all about that a person should have confidence in themselves. And he saw low self-esteem as being the issue of the day that people were struggling with, not only teens, but all people he felt are struggling with that. And that's something that he spent a lifetime working on. He works with alcoholics, those with addiction. He sees that those people are people that have very low self-esteem, and that's why they're falling into that trap, into that way of life. And in general, he feels it's something that the generation needs to hear. So if you take any of his 70 books off the bookshelf, that's going to be the theme in all of his books, and he keeps writing about that. He's a very important personality in our generation who also sees this as a message. Obviously, there's a problem there. He doesn't need to write 70 books about it for the Jewish community if we're all doing well in that area. So he felt that there was something lacking. And another personality who speaks a lot about this topic in all of his teachings, in his major message to his Hasidim, and that is the Lubavitcher Rebbe. Lubavitcher Rebbe emphasizes, interesting, they have Rav Kook and Lubavitcher Rebbe who's emphasizing this idea. If you go, you can go to YouTube and you can see this when they interview Rabbi Jonathan Sachs, Lord Sachs, and they ask him about he had a very close relationship with Lubavitcher Rebbe. Everything that he did in his life, he first went to Lubavitcher Rebbe to get his take, his direction, and he followed everything that the Rebbe told him to do. And one of the things that he says about the Rebbe is that what he did so successfully is that he built leaders. And look at the Chabad movement today. That you have people that will go anywhere in the world and they'll plop themselves down, they'll put up a shingle, say Chabad house, and I'm ready to go. Now, how do you convince people to do that? How do you convince somebody to go where there are no Jews, where there's no infrastructure, where there's nobody paying you the salary, where you don't know how you're going to raise your children? How do you convince somebody to do that? Unless you convince people that they have kanfei ruach, that they have tremendous strength, tremendous potential and ability to achieve. And the Rebbe did that. The Rebbe was able to do that to all of his Hasidim, and they continue to get that message from the Rebbe as well. I just want to share with you one story, and this is a story you can look this up as well. It's Rabbi Weinreb, Rabbi Tzvi Hirsch Weinreb, who was the rabbi in Baltimore for many years, and he was the head of the OU, Rabbi Weinreb. You have his Divrei Torah each week, beautiful Divrei Torah in Torah Tibbetz, a plug for Torah Tibbetz, and he tells the following story. So he's about 30 years old at the time. He's living in Silver Spring, Maryland, and he's actually going through some difficulties in terms of emunah, in terms of faith, in terms of direction in life. And he says to himself, you know what, I'm going to call the Rebbe. I'll call the Rebbe of Chabad, Rabbi Nachum Mendel Schneerson. So he calls, and the secretary of the Rebbe, this man picks up the phone in the same room with the Rebbe, and he says that I'd like to speak to the Rebbe, and I have some issues, and I'm kind of struggling with faith. And so he asks, well, where are you? And he says, well, I'm in Silver Spring, Maryland. So he hears the Rebbe, who's not on the phone, but right near his secretary. He hears the Rebbe say that, tell him the following, that there's a rabbi by the name of Weinreb that lives there, and he should go and speak to Weinreb. That's Weinreb was on the phone. So he hears that. He hears that, and he says to the secretary, he says, well, I'm Weinreb, and I think I'm the Weinreb that he's speaking about. So the secretary then says to the Rebbe, well, I have Weinreb on the phone, and you told him to speak to Weinreb. So the Rebbe says, you know what? There is a time that Weinreb needs to speak to Weinreb. And tell him that Weinreb should speak to Weinreb, that you need to work this out, that I believe in you, that you have the strength to find the answers yourself. So he speaks about that as this was the Rebbe, that the Rebbe had this message that he shared with his Hasidim, and he shares with all of us the self-esteem that we need to have, the confidence that we need to have in ourselves. Okay. And one last source. We'll end with this. And the question that I was asking myself as I was learning this material is, what is this? What's particular about Rav Kook in this area? In other words, why is he emphasizing this? This idea, which is such a beautiful idea. We all need to hear it. But is there anything particular to Rav Kook and his philosophy overall? And I think one of the one of the ideas behind Rav Kook's emphasis on self-confidence and this self-esteem relates to the land of Israel and coming back to the land of Israel. We know whenever we talk about Rav Kook, we talk about the land of Israel. I want to read to you the following, and this is a Mishnah also in Pirkei Avos that says the following. It's a Mishnah that you're familiar with, and it says, Yehuda ben Tema Omer, Heve az kenamer, you should be as strong as a leopard, kal kenesher, light as an eagle, fly like an eagle, like Rav Kook said earlier, ratz ketzvi, run like a deer, v'gibor ke'ari, strong as a lion, lasot ritzon avicha shvashamayim. And then the Mishnah goes on, Hu yomer az panim legehenim, which is interesting because all of that is really about the self-confidence that a person needs to have. Be like a lion, be like a leopard, be like strong like an eagle. But the next statement is, Az panim legehenim. But if you're too arrogant, you're going to make your way to Gehenim, okay? Uboshet panim, but you need to have humility, and then you're going to make your way to Gan Eden. But look at what the Mishnah then writes. Yehi ratzon milfanecha, may be your will, Hashem, v'elokei avosenu, sheyibane beis hamikdash b'meher v'yameinu, that's part of the Mishnah. This is the strangest thing in the world, that in a Mishnah you have this prayer. It's a prayer that we're familiar with actually from the end of the Amidah, that we incorporate that into our daily davening, and here it's found in a Mishnah. So you have one of the great rabbis of our great rabbinic personalities, Rabbi Yaakov Emden. I'm not sure if that's a name that you're familiar with. If you want to learn more about Rav Yaakov Emden, there's a Rabbi Jacob J. Schachter of Yeshiva University. That was his PhD thesis at Harvard, was about the life of Yaakov Emden. Very fascinating personality, one of the great Talmidei Chachamim. And he writes the following. This is his Perush to Pirkei Avos. Ma inyan bakasher tchina b'Mishnah. Why is there this prayer, this supplication found in the Mishnah? Uperush ki adibar hazeh kasher l'reisha shel Mishnah. That it's related to the opening of the Mishnah. Yehuda ben Tema tziva al adam sheyeh az kenamer v'gibor kari la'asot ritzon avinu shebashamayim. And look at the following, middle of the 3 lines down. V'nei achshav machmat hagalut, because we're in the exile, batlu ha'oz v'hagvura me'itanu. We have lost some of that strength and self-confidence. Ve'ein anachnu yicholim la'avod ad Hashem yiparach kifi shir hakochot, that we're not serving God with the strength, with our abilities, with our talents as we should. She'amar Yehuda ben Tema, that he opened the Mishnah with, Shekain mishu akor mimkamo, if you're not settled in the place where you're supposed to be, kochot nafsho nichshalim, then your strength is weakened. So Rav Yaakov Emden, how does he interpret this Mishnah? The only way that we can be az kenamer and kal kenesha and ratz ketzvi, this strength, what do we need to have? We can't do it outside the land of Israel. It's not possible, right? The persecution and the suffering, and that we're hiding. And we have to think about, should I wear a kippah in public or not? Should I put on a hat? If we're thinking that way, so we're already in a posture that's not a positive one, right? We're huddling, in the ghettos, right? In the shtetls. So Rav Yaakov Emden says that's the relationship. That's how you are to read this Mishnah. The only way you can be gibor, the only way you can be ratz ketzvi, is Yehi Ratzon, we need to be back in the land of Israel. And I think that's part of what drives Rav Kook as well, this idea of the confidence that we need to have. Maybe we've lost some of that over the years. Maybe we've lost a bit of that in the experience of the exile, where it's a little bit, where we've been, with all the suffering that we went through, we're a bit broken. And we need to be built up again. And part of Eretz Yisrael is sometimes maybe we go overboard with a little bit too much chutzpah here in Eretz Yisrael today. But that there's a lot of positivity, the positivity in coming back to the land of Israel. I'll just end with the following, and I just heard this past week. Rabbi Shai Schachter, I don't know if you know that name. He's a rabbi in Woodmere, New York, in the Young Israel of Woodmere, and he's the son of Rav Herschel Schachter, who's Shlita, one of the great Rashi Yeshiva at Yeshiva University. And his son, Rav Shai Schachter, also is quite an awesome Talmid Chacham and a great speaker. If you go to TORAH, all of his shiurim have thousands of people listening to him on a regular basis. So when he received that position, he was appointed to that position to be the rabbi. He's actually not the rabbi of the shul. He's like the Rosh Beis Medrash. He didn't want to be the rabbi because he didn't want to run around all day with levayas and weddings and all that stuff. He wanted really just to teach. And so that's what he does. He's teaching as a Beis Medrash. So when the day that he was appointed to be the Rosh Beis Medrash in Woodmere, in the Young Israel, so he received a call from Rav Usher Weiss, who is one of the Gedolei Torah, one of the great poskim in the world today. He lives in Yerushalayim. He's considered to be one of the most important poskim. He congratulated him, and then he said to him the following, and Rav Shai Shechter said, this is something that he'll always remember. He said, Lo chashuv kama ata gadol, ella kama ata gadel. It's not important how great you are, it's important how much you are growing, that you continue to grow. Lo chashuv kama ata gadol, ella kama ata gadel. And Rav Shai Shechter said that he wrote this and he has this on his desk and he sees this every day and he looks at it, reads it every day, that it's all about growing. It's all about believing in yourself. And this is what Rav Usher Weiss, that was the message that he gave him as he was starting this position. So I think this is one of the beautiful ideas of Rav Kook, something that we can all take for ourselves, the confidence that we should have, the confidence that we should bring to others as well, to complement others, to bring out the best in others. And we have the special schus, as Rav Kook says, of being back in the land of Israel, where we can be ourselves, where naturally we can succeed and achieve. Wish everyone a wonderful day and a wonderful week. Look forward to seeing you next week, B'ezrat Hashem.